I didn't know my life was about to collapse when my boyfriend laughed. He was standing by the door, suitcase already packed, phone in hand, keys jingling like he was in a hurry to escape. He smiled the way people do when they think they've already won the argument. "You'd be a useless wife," he said casually. "Even my ex handled life better than you." He said it like a joke, but it wasn't. He leaned down, kissed my cheek, and told me he was heading out for a work trip, a conference. 4 days, Thursday to Sunday. Just another stretch of long distance inside a relationship that already ran on uneven schedules. Except the flight he claimed he booked didn't exist. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask questions. I didn't cry or beg or demand explanations. Instead, I took a screenshot and sent it to his ex-girlfriend's husband. The next night, when someone tapped my boyfriend's shoulder at the apartment he thought was safe, he screamed before he even turned around. I'm 29 years old, and 2 weeks ago, I learned that some people don't just lie to you. They rebuild their entire past to justify why you're not enough. This isn't just a story about cheating. It's about comparison, about gaslighting, about being slowly trained to believe you're inadequate while the person beside you is quietly living a second life. I had been with him for 2 years. We met through mutual friends at a party, started dating seriously a few months later, moved in together last year. From the outside, we looked stable, normal, predictable in the way adults are supposed to be. He worked in marketing, traveled occasionally, always had a reason to be somewhere else. I worked remotely in software development. Different rhythm, different pace. I believe that balance made us stronger. I didn't realize it made me easier to deceive. The comparisons to his ex started slowly, almost playfully. Her name slipped into conversations more often. She became a measuring stick I never agreed to compete with, and without realizing it, I started shrinking, apologizing for things I shouldn't have, questioning my own competence, wondering why I never seemed to measure up. That morning, when he told me I'd be a useless wife and drove off to a conference that wasn't real, something inside me finally stopped trying to understand. Instead, I checked. And once I did, there was no going back. Because the trip wasn't to a conference, it was to her, and she wasn't single. That lie set off a chain reaction that destroyed more than just our relationship. It destroyed a marriage, exposed a double life, and forced every single person involved to face the truth they'd been avoiding. This is about the flight that never existed, the ex who never really became an ex, and the moment I realized that being too trusting is exactly what liars depend on. Before everything unraveled, my life with him looked ordinary in the way people envy without really looking closely. I was 29, working remotely as a software developer, spending most of my days at home with my laptop, my coffee, and a schedule that didn't need anyone else's permission. I liked structure. I liked clarity. I liked knowing where I stood. I wasn't reckless with my emotions or my time. When I committed fully. I met him at a friend's party 2 years ago. Nothing dramatic, no instant lightning strike. He was charming in a practiced way. Easy smile, confident posture. The kind of man who knew how to hold a room's attention without trying too hard. We talked about work, travel, music. He worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm, told stories about conferences, clients, airports. He sounded ambitious, driven, alive. We started dating seriously a few months later. At first, our differences felt complementary. He was outgoing, always on the move. I was steady, grounded, content, staying in. He liked energy and momentum. I liked depth and consistency. When we moved in together last year, it felt like a natural next step. Shared space, shared routines, shared plans. Or so I thought. He traveled more than I did. That was always part of the deal. Conferences, meetings, networking events in different cities. I trusted him because he never gave me a reason not to. I never checked itineraries, never asked for proof. I believe that trust was the foundation of adulthood. Looking back now, that trust made things easier for him. Around the 18th month of our relationship, something subtle shifted. His ex started coming up in conversation more often. Her name slipped in casually at first, wrapped in nostalgia. According to him, they'd dated for 3 years and broken up because of distance when she took a job in another city. A clean ending. No drama, no lingering feelings. At least that's how he told it. At first, she was just part of his past. Then she became a reference point, a comparison. She used to plan dates better. She never forgot things like bills or errands. She handled stress more calmly than you. Each comment on its own sounded minor, annoying, but not alarming. I told myself he didn't mean harm, that everyone compares sometimes, that I shouldn't be insecure. But those comments stacked up quietly. Without realizing it, I started measuring myself against a woman I'd never met, a woman who existed only through his carefully edited memories. I tried harder, became more accommodating, more apologetic. I told myself that relationships require effort, and that effort meant adjusting. What I didn't see was how that narrative benefited him. By the time he announced his upcoming work conference in Austin, I was already conditioned to doubt myself instead of him. When he spoke about the trip, Thursday through Sunday, panels, networking, hotel downtown, I didn't question a thing. Why would I? This was his world, his rhythm. I had learned to stay out of it. The night before he left, I asked for his flight details casually, just wanting to know when he'd land. He forwarded an itinerary immediately. Professional, clean, convincing. I went to bed believing I was in a normal relationship with normal problems. I had no idea I was about to discover that almost everything I believed about him and about us had been carefully constructed to keep me exactly where I was, trusting, quiet, and completely in the dark. The truth is, the lie didn't start with the fake flight. It started much earlier, in ways that were easy to excuse and even easier to minimize. The comparisons began quietly, almost innocently. At first, his ex-girlfriend's name appeared, the way old memories sometimes do. Casual, unthreatening, wrapped in nostalgia. He'd mentioned something she used to do well, usually right after I'd done something imperfect. She was really good at planning things, he said once, after a date I'd organized last minute. She never forgot stuff like bills, he added another time when I asked him to remind me later. She handled pressure better than most people, he said during an argument when I felt overwhelmed. Each comment landed softly enough that I could pretend it didn't hurt. I told myself it was harmless, that he was just talking, that everyone compares sometimes without meaning anything by it. I didn't want to be the girlfriend who overreacted, who made everything about insecurity, so I swallowed it. What I didn't realize was that these weren't random remarks. They were building a story where I was always a little behind, a little less capable, a little too sensitive. And in that story, his ex-girlfriend wasn't just part of his past. She was the standard I was constantly failing to meet. The more he compared, the more I adjusted. I tried to be more organized, more attentive, more accommodating. I caught myself apologizing for things that didn't require apologies. I started double-checking myself before speaking, wondering if I sounded overwhelmed or difficult. And slowly, without him ever raising his voice, the balance of power shifted. Friends noticed it before I did. One of them joked that I'd started walking on eggshells. Another asked, gently, why I always seemed to be defending him even when he wasn't around. I brushed it off. Relationships aren't perfect, I said. We're just different. Meanwhile, his schedule became less transparent. Work trips happened more often. Conferences that popped up suddenly. Weekend travel that always seemed non-negotiable. He talked about networking, about opportunities, about how important these trips were for his career. I believed him because believing him was easier than questioning the foundation of our life together. The night before the Austin trip, when I asked for his flight information, I wasn't suspicious. I just wanted to know when he'd land. He forwarded the itinerary within minutes. Efficient, confident, like someone who had nothing to hide. But something about that night stuck with me. The way he triple-checked his phone while packing, the way he arranged his clothes with unusual precision, the way he delivered that final comment, "You'd be a useless wife. Even my ex handled life better," with a smile sharp enough to leave a mark. It wasn't just cruel. It was strategic. He said it while leaving, when I wouldn't have time to respond, while I'd be alone, replaying it in my head. And it worked. For a moment, I did exactly what I'd been trained to do. I questioned myself instead of him. But this time, something didn't settle. For the first time in months, I didn't immediately look inward. I looked outward. And that shift, small, quiet, almost invisible, was the beginning of the end. The moment he walked out the door, suitcase rolling behind him, the apartment went quiet in a way I hadn't felt before. He had said it so easily. "You'd be a useless wife. Even my ex handled life better than you." Not shouted, not argued, just dropped into the air like a fact. I stood there long after his car pulled away, the words replaying in my head. Useless wife. Not girlfriend. Wife. A future version of me he had already decided would never be enough. My chest felt tight, like my body had reacted before my mind could catch up. I went back inside and sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and tried to work. The code blurred. My fingers hovered uselessly over the keyboard. Something felt off, deeper than the insult itself, the way he had packed so carefully, the way he triple-checked his phone, the way that comment felt rehearsed, like it was meant to keep me small while he was gone. I opened the email he'd forwarded the night before. The itinerary looked legitimate. Airline logo, flight number, departure time, hotel confirmation, conference schedule. Anyone glancing at it would assume it was real. That's what made me hesitate. I'm not a suspicious person by nature. I don't go looking for lies. But I build systems for a living, and systems only work when inputs are real. Something about this input didn't sit right. So I did the one thing I had never done in 2 years. I checked. I called the airline. "I'm trying to confirm a flight for my boyfriend," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Departing today at 2 p.m. to Austin." The representative typed for a moment. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't see a booking under that name for today." My stomach tightened. "Could you check the flight number? AA18847. More typing. "That flight exists and is departing on time," she said, "but there's no passenger under his name on the manifest." For a second, I couldn't breathe. I thanked her and hung up, my hands trembling slightly as I set the phone down. The room felt smaller, louder. The lie had shape now. Wait. If he wasn't on that flight, then he wasn't going to Austin. And if the trip wasn't real, then everything around it was a performance. I didn't cry. I stood up and started looking. His tablet was still in the bedside drawer, the one he used for personal things. He must have assumed he wouldn't need it for a work trip. It wasn't password protected. When the screen lit up, his messages were already open. Her name was there. His ex-girlfriend. Not old messages, not archived memories, recent conversations, hundreds of them, stretching back months. I told her it's a conference. 4 days together, just us. She has no idea. She still thinks you and I are ancient history. My vision blurred as I scrolled. They talked about hotels booked under her name, about meeting at her place instead of the airport so no one would see them together, about how comfortable I was, how trusting, how safe but boring. The most recent message was from the night before. "Flight's fake. I'm meeting you directly. Can't wait." My hands went cold. She wasn't single. A few clicks later, I confirmed it. Her social media led to her husband. Wedding photos, family pictures, a life that looked intact from the outside. My boyfriend wasn't just cheating on me. He was sleeping with a married woman. I sat there for a long time, the silence pressing in, before I started taking screenshots. Every message, every plan, every lie. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I documented. Then I did something I never imagined I'd do. I found her husband's email, and I told him the truth. I didn't call my boyfriend. I didn't warn him. I didn't give him a chance to rewrite the story again. I sent the evidence, and then I waited. Because lies this carefully constructed don't collapse quietly. They explode. After I sent the email, the apartment felt unnaturally still. I remember staring at my screen, the sent confirmation sitting there like a quiet line drawn in permanent ink. There was no rush of triumph, no sense of victory, just a deep, hollow calm that came from finally telling the truth after months of swallowing it. For a moment, I wondered if I had gone too far. That reflex came quickly, familiar, almost automatic. The instinct to question myself before questioning him, to ask whether I was being dramatic, cruel, unreasonable. I sat on the edge of the couch and replayed everything, searching for a version of events where this was somehow my fault. Had I been distant, too focused on my work, too comfortable, too boring? The old narrative tried to pull me back in. But this time it didn't stick, because the evidence was still open on the screen. 6 months of messages, 6 months of planning, 6 months of lying to my face while telling another woman how trusting I was, how easy it was to deceive me. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't complicated. It was deliberate. I felt sick, but not surprised. That realization hurt more than anything else. On some level, I had already known something was wrong. My body had known before my mind allowed it. The tension in my chest every time he compared me to her, the way I'd started shrinking to avoid conflict, the constant feeling that I was auditioning for a role I never agreed to play. I walked through the apartment slowly, noticing things I had ignored before. The way his jacket always stayed by the door, ready to leave. The way his phone never left his side. The way he talked about commitment in abstract terms but avoided concrete plans. I sat down again, my hands shaking now, not from fear, but from the delayed shock of clarity. That's when the calls started. One, then another, then another. His name lit up my phone over and over. I didn't answer. I listened to the voicemails stack up instead, his voice shifting with each one. At first, confused. Hey, something weird just happened. Call me back. Then panicked. I don't understand how this is happening. Then desperate. Please, just pick up. Hearing his fear didn't comfort me. It confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of being exposed. For the first time since we started dating, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't preparing explanations or rehearsing forgiveness. I wasn't imagining how we could talk this through. I was just sitting with the truth. And the truth was brutal, but clean. He had spent months convincing me I wasn't enough while secretly trying to have everything. Stability with me, excitement with her, no consequences, no accountability. I realized then that whatever came next, anger, fallout, confrontation, I had already crossed the hardest line. I had stopped protecting him. And once you do that, there's no going back. Friday morning didn't ease in. It crashed. My phone started vibrating before sunrise. I watched it light up on the nightstand, his name flashing again and again like an alarm I refused to shut off. 17 missed calls by the time I finally sat up. The voicemails stacked fast, his voice unraveling in real time. At first, he sounded confused. Something happened. I don't know how, but her husband showed up. Then panicked. He knows everything. I swear I didn't tell him. Then pleading. Please call me back. I need to explain. I didn't call back. Instead, I checked my email. There was a message waiting for me from his ex's husband. He thanked me for telling him. He told me he confronted his wife the night before. She admitted everything. The months of messages, the fake trips, the lies. He told me he was filing for divorce and that there were children involved, 2 of them, who were now waking up to a home that would never feel the same. He said he was sorry I was going through this too. I sat there holding my phone, the weight of it finally sinking in. This wasn't just my heartbreak anymore. This was a chain reaction. A family caught in the crossfire of 2 people who decided their excitement mattered more than anyone else's stability. Around mid-morning, my boyfriend called again. This time I answered. Where are you? He asked, his voice shaking. At home, I said. Where you left me when you went on your fake work trip. Silence. Then quietly, so you know. I know everything, I said. The fake flight, the messages, the plans, the 6 months you spent lying to me while telling her how easy it was. He tried to explain. He always did. History, feelings, complications. The same excuses people use when they don't want to say the word choice. I told him about the email, about sending the screenshots, about his ex-husband knowing the truth. His tone changed instantly, hardened. You had no right, he snapped. You ruined everything. No, I said. You did. I just stopped lying for you. He hung up on me. Saturday afternoon, he came home. I heard his key in the door and felt something settle in my chest. Not fear, not anger, but finality. He looked exhausted, suitcase dragging behind him, makeup smudged from a night that didn't go the way he planned. We need to talk, he said. There's nothing left to talk about, I replied. You lied, you cheated, we're done. He tried to reframe it, to soften it, to call it figuring things out, to say feelings don't disappear just because relationships end. He admitted he wanted both, my stability and her excitement, as if wanting it made it understandable. It didn't. When he said they loved each other, I didn't flinch. When he said I was safe but boring, I almost laughed, because for the first time, those words had no power over me. He packed more clothes, told me he'd stay with a friend, said he'd come back for the rest later. I told him to take whatever he wanted. I meant it. When he left the next morning, I watched from the window as he loaded his car, checked his phone, and went pale. Later, I learned why. His ex's husband had commented publicly on a vague post she'd made about going through a hard time, exposing the affair in front of her friends, her family, and her workplace. The story they thought they controlled was no longer theirs, and there was nothing either of them could do to stop it. When the door closed behind him that Sunday morning, the silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where his suitcase had been, my hands resting uselessly at my sides. The apartment felt unfamiliar, like I was standing inside someone else's life. Every room held echoes of routines we'd built together, coffee mugs on the counter, his shoes by the door, the indentation on the couch where he always sat. Only now there was no one left to pretend for. That was when the weight finally hit me. Not the shock, not the anger, the aftermath. I sank onto the floor, my back against the couch, and let myself feel it all at once. The humiliation of being compared to a woman who had never actually left his life. The slow erosion of my confidence over months of subtle criticism. The realization that while I had been adjusting, apologizing, and trying to be better, he had been planning hotel rooms and fake flights. I felt stupid. Not because I trusted him, but because I had ignored myself. I replayed every moment I'd brushed off as insignificant, every comparison I'd laughed along with. Every time I told myself I was overreacting, I thought about the way he'd called me boring, how he'd said it with a smile that made it feel like a joke instead of a wound. And then there was the guilt. Guilt about the family I'd helped shatter by telling the truth. About 2 children whose lives had been upended because their father couldn't keep his promises. I knew logically that the responsibility wasn't mine, but guilt doesn't care about logic. It seeps in quietly and asks questions that have no good answers. What if I had confronted him first? What if I had walked away silently? What if I had chosen peace over exposure? Those questions kept me awake that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own breathing in the dark. But underneath the guilt, there was something else. Relief. A deep, aching relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore. That I didn't have to wonder where he was or who he was texting. That I didn't have to live inside a story that kept rewriting itself to make me feel small. That realization scared me, because it meant the lowest point wasn't losing him. It was realizing how long I had stayed after he stopped choosing me. I cried then, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, the way you cry when you finally stop holding everything together. My chest hurt, my throat burned, but when the tears slowed, there was a strange clarity waiting on the other side. I wasn't broken. I had been lied to, manipulated, compared until I doubted my own worth. And surviving that didn't make me weak. It made me awake. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't healed. But I wasn't lost anymore either. I was standing at the bottom of the story, looking up, knowing the only way forward was through. The turning point didn't come with a dramatic confrontation. It came quietly, on a Tuesday afternoon, when I realized I hadn't checked my phone in hours, and I didn't feel anxious about it. That scared me more than anything else. For the first time since the truth exploded, my mind wasn't replaying conversations or drafting imaginary arguments. I wasn't wondering what he was doing, who he was with, or whether he regretted anything. The mental noise that had followed me for months was suddenly gone. I was sitting at my desk working when it hit me. I felt peaceful, not numb, not distracted, peaceful. That's when I understood something fundamental. The chaos in my life hadn't started when I exposed the affair. It had started long before, when I accepted comparison as love and criticism as motivation. Later that day, I got an email from his ex's husband again. He didn't write much this time, just an update. The divorce was moving quickly. The evidence I sent had made things very clear. He thanked me again, not with bitterness, but with a strange kind of calm. He said knowing the truth hurt, but not knowing it would have been worse. I closed my laptop and sat back, letting that sink in. That was the moment I stopped feeling guilty. Because truth doesn't destroy healthy relationships. It only destroys the lies holding unhealthy ones together. A few hours later, my ex texted me from a new number, a long message, apologetic in tone, but still careful with responsibility. He said he never meant to hurt me, that things got out of control, that he felt like he was living 2 lives and didn't know how to stop. I read it once, then I read it again. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself or correct his version of events. I didn't need him to understand. I already did. He hadn't been confused. He had been comfortable. Comfortable letting me believe I was inadequate. Comfortable taking my stability while chasing excitement elsewhere. Comfortable as long as I stayed quiet and trusting and slightly unsure of myself. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked the number. That single action felt heavier than sending the screenshots ever had. Because it wasn't reactive. It was intentional. That night, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I studied my face, not critically, not defensively, but curiously. I saw someone who had been patient, loyal, willing to compromise, someone who had mistaken endurance for love. And I finally asked myself the question I should have asked months ago. If this were happening to someone I loved, what would I tell her to do? The answer was immediate. Leave. Choose clarity. Stop negotiating your worth. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. I didn't need him to admit anything. I already had what I needed. The truth, my voice, and the certainty that I would never shrink myself again just to make someone else feel bigger. That's when the story stopped being about what he did to me and started being about what I chose for myself. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It spread. At first, it stayed contained within our small orbit. Mutual friends whispering, group chats going quiet, invitations arriving without his name attached anymore. People didn't ask me questions directly. They didn't need to. The truth had a way of traveling faster than explanations ever could. His ex-husband didn't stay silent. The screenshots made it impossible for anyone to reframe the story. There were dates, times, plans, months of intention laid bare. When the divorce filing became official, the narrative shifted from messy breakup to something heavier, something undeniable. His ex lost more than a relationship. She lost credibility. Her social media posts turned vague and defensive. Going through a hard time. People don't know the full story. Comments appeared underneath. First sympathetic, then skeptical, then sharp. Someone shared a screenshot, then another. By the end of the week, the comments were locked. His workplace noticed. It wasn't dramatic. No public firing. Just quiet meetings behind closed doors, emails sent with careful wording. When your personal life becomes a liability, companies don't need to explain much. He resigned before they made the decision for him. A fresh start, he told people. A phrase that sounded hopeful until you realized it was just another way of saying burned bridges. Friends began to distance themselves, not because they were loyal to me, but because lies make people uncomfortable once they're exposed. Being associated with deception suddenly felt risky. People who once laughed at his stories now avoided eye contact. The charm didn't land the same way. As for me, I didn't announce anything. I didn't defend myself online. I didn't tell my side loudly. I didn't correct every version of the story. I moved. A smaller apartment. Just mine. Fewer rooms, fewer memories. The first night there, I slept on the floor with a blanket and felt lighter than I had in months. The quiet didn't feel empty, it felt clean. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd tolerated comparison for so long, why I'd confused patience with loyalty, why I'd been so quick to doubt myself and so slow to question him. The answers weren't flattering, but they were freeing. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual friends that he and his ex tried to make it work once everything was exposed. 6 weeks. That's all it lasted. Turns out excitement fades quickly when it's no longer secret. When there's no one left to deceive, the magic disappears. I wasn't surprised. Relationships built on lies don't survive daylight. The last I heard, he was planning another move, another reset, another attempt to outrun the version of himself everyone had finally seen. I didn't wish him harm. I just stopped wishing him well. Because some lessons don't come with neat endings. They come with consequences that linger long after the story stops being yours. And I had already moved on. 3 months later, my life is quieter, but it's honest. The new apartment doesn't echo with explanations I no longer owe. There are no half-finished arguments lingering in the air, no subtle comparisons waiting to surface at the wrong moment. Mornings belong to me again. Coffee tastes like coffee. Silence feels earned, not punishing. I started dating again, slowly, carefully, not because I'm afraid, but because I finally understand what I'm protecting. I'm clear about my boundaries now, about honesty, about respect, about the difference between chemistry and character. If someone jokes at my expense, I don't laugh it off. If someone compares me to a ghost from their past, I don't compete. I leave. Therapy helped me see the pattern clearly. I didn't miss the red flags because I was naive. I missed them because they were wrapped in charm and delivered gradually. Comparison disguised as motivation. Criticism framed as help. Gaslighting that trained me to look inward whenever something felt wrong. The lesson wasn't that I trusted too much. The lesson was that trust must be mutual and earned continuously. I think back to the morning he left for a trip that didn't exist, to the way he said I'd be a useless wife, how casually he reduced a future he was already betraying. He was right about one thing, just not in the way he thought. I would have been useless to him. Useless as a cover story. Useless as emotional insurance. Useless as the stable option while he chased excitement elsewhere. But I am incredibly useful to myself. I told the truth when it mattered. I refused to protect a lie that was destroying other people's lives. I chose clarity over comfort, even when it cost me everything I thought I was building. The flight that didn't exist became the lie that couldn't survive a single fact check. The affair that thrived in secrecy collapsed the moment it met daylight. And the man who thought I was too trusting underestimated one crucial thing. I pay attention. If there's one thing I want anyone listening to take from this, it's this. If someone keeps comparing you to their past, it's because they're still living in it. If someone makes you feel small while asking for your loyalty, that loyalty will never be enough. And if the truth destroys a relationship, the truth wasn't the problem. I didn't lose a boyfriend. I lost a version of myself that was willing to accept less than honesty. And that's a loss I'll never mourn.